You know, sometimes it can be just a little bit tricky as to know when we should start certain seeds. I'm really glad you joined me today. My name is Bobby. I want to share with you just a little method that I use. It's nothing new, but it really helps me to wrap my head around and get a handle on when I should start certain seeds. So if we're talking about warm season tender annuals, whether they be cut flowers or whether they be veggies, you know, such as your zinnia, such as your celosia, such as your tomatoes, your peppers, and things like that, you know that they are what is known as a warm season tender annual, and they're pretty straightforward. You know that if you want to start these indoors and you want to grow on your little seedlings, that you do not want to plant out those seedlings for the warm season tender annual well until after your last frost. So for me in my zone 6B, my last frost date is usually around April 23rd. So for the warm season tender annuals that I start indoors under grow lights, I do not plant them out until around the 1st of May, just to make sure that all of the frost has pretty well passed. But what if you want to broaden your horizons a little bit and you want to grow cut flowers for earlier in the spring and early summer, and you're not sure, like, oh boy, this is a whole new category. We know that that category of flowers is called cool flowers or hardy annuals. So those are the ones that became tricky for me. Like I said, the warm season tender annuals, they really weren't tricky for me. I pretty much know what to do and when to do with those. But the cool flowers kind of tripped me up a little bit, and it took me about a year to wrap my brain around, or a little bit more than a year, to wrap my brain around, okay, when do I start what with the cool flowers? When I say cool flowers, I mean things like snapdragons, stock, feverfew, which is a perennial, but you can also use that as a hardy annual. Scabiosa, pincushion flowers, did I say statice, straw flowers, yarrow, I use yarrow as an annual, so that is a cool flower for me. Things like that, those are what's known as cool flowers. And you need to know a couple of key things so that you can know when to start these cool flowers. Now, I do have this book by Lisa Mason Ziegler. This is a great book, and it's called Cool Flowers. And she, in the back, she has the reference as to when to sow everything. And I actually made notes in the back and wrote there just to be able to go back and to refer to it. But I still need a little extra help, and I'll show you where I get that extra help from. But first, let's talk about the key things that you and I need to know as to when we start certain seeds. We need to know what zone we're in, and you can find out that information by simply doing an internet search and typing in what is my growing zone and type in your zip code, and that will tell you exactly what growing zone you're in. Now, the USDA has changed the growing zone this year, and they've bumped everything up because in most places our climates have become a little bit warmer, so they've bumped everything up. I am in a zone 6B, so that information is really key to me. I also know when my last frost date is, and it's usually around April 23rd, and then I know when my first frost date is, my first expected frost date, and that is usually around October 23rd. So those three key elements really help me to know what to start and when. So when I said I need a little extra help as to know what to start and when, after knowing the three key elements, my extra help always comes from the back of the seed packet. And here's what I've done, and here's what helps me to really kind of get a handle on what to start when. For instance, let's go with straw flower. So for the straw flower, and there's a little bit of a caveat to the straw flower that we'll talk about in a second, but on the back of this seed packet, and these are from the Gardener's Workshop, the lady that wrote the book Cool Flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler, is the one who founded and owns the Gardener's Workshop. I get the majority of my seeds from the Gardener's Workshop. And a little tip, if you download their app, they have free shipping on seeds on their app only, the free shipping on seeds. So if you order one seed packet, you get free shipping, and that's a great deal. Okay, so the back of this seed packet says, for the straw flower, a cool season hardy annual that prefers full sun. I already know that, but you know, it's a good thing that they have that on there. Start seeds 4 to 6 weeks before planting date or cast seeds directly into the garden. Now, I would not cast the seeds directly into the garden. When the seed packet says start seeds indoors 4 to 6 weeks before planting date, that means that is really what the seed prefers. So that's what I'm going to do. So back to this, start seeds indoors 4 to 6 weeks before planting date. Okay, well, Lisa, you don't say what the planting date is. The reason why she doesn't say what the planting date is because it's different for everybody. You may be in a zone 4, so your planting date would be just a little bit later than mine. I think Lisa is in a zone 8, so her planting date is sooner than mine. She can plant things out in her garden in her zone 8 sooner than I can in my zone 6B. So because I know my zone is a 6B, I'm like, okay, start seeds 4 to 6 weeks before planting date. So then I need to figure out, okay, what is my planting date that I want to plant these straw flowers out in my garden? Now, the next key piece of information on the back of this seed packet, it says winter hardy to zone 8. So if I lived in a zone 8 or warmer, then I know that I could plant these out or even plant these out in the autumn time. That's another category that we probably won't get into today, but I could plant these out possibly in the autumn time and they would overwinter, but I know I could plant them out really early if I'm in a zone 8. A straw flower takes 75 to 85 days to bloom. Now that's not a super long window that it takes to bloom. Okay, so back to the start seeds 4 to 6 weeks before planting date. So here's where the little caveat comes in concerning straw flowers in particular. Even though they are winter hardy to zone 8, it says on the seed packet, I've actually found that straw flowers can just take a little bit cooler. They don't mind a little bit cooler, even a little light frost. So to me, in my mind, that bumps them back to a zone 7, even though it says they're winter hardy to a zone 8. So, because I know these things, because I've had experience with straw flowers, I'm going to go ahead and plant my seedlings out before my last frost date, which is April 23rd. I hope this is making sense to you. And I can also carefully monitor the weather. If I think it's going to be like a really freak turn of weather and maybe snow, I can just run out there and cover them because I always have hoops and I always have cover ready. So if I needed to do that, I could, but most likely I won't need to do that. So let's just say that I want to plant my straw flowers out in my garden on April 15th. So that means, all right, 4 to 6 weeks, that's when I want to start the seeds, 4 to 6 weeks before April 15th. So then I'm going to back up 4 weeks would be March 15th, 2 more weeks would be March 5th. I'm going to start the seeds of the straw flowers around March 5th, which I'm actually going to start them around March 1st. I know I'm throwing you way off, but I'm saying in general, this is what has helped me get a handle on when to plant and when to start my seeds, because I just couldn't get it for a year or two. I was like, Lisa, please just give me a date. But there's no way she could do that on the back of her seed packet because, you know, we're all different. We all live in different zones. So what I do, I group together the ones that say they're hardy to zone 7 or 8, and I usually start those around the same time. And the seed packet says for most all of these that I want to start 4 to 6 weeks before you plant them out in your garden. So I group those winter hardy zone 7 and 8s together, and I know that I want to start those seeds around the 1st of March for when I want to plant them out. I always give myself a window of about a week because I don't always hit right on the day that I have written down or the day that I know that I want to sow these flowers. Monarda lambada, I'm going to be starting that. Persian crest, that's what I'm going to be using as a filler. Statice. Now statice is like the straw flower. It can take a little bit cooler temperatures. And in my experience, the statice takes a little bit longer to grow on. So I want to make sure that I get that started on a pretty good schedule. So I lump all of those zone 7s and zone 8s together. That's when I know I want to start them. And this video is getting really long, and I'm sorry. It's a vast subject, so I want to try to get as much as in for you as possible. Let's talk about veggies for a minute. For instance, beets. I like to start my beets, and you can direct sow your beets, of course, but I like to start my beets ahead of time. I like to start them in soil blocks, in the 2-inch soil blocks, or the Burpee reusable cell packs, because they have a bigger cell. I know that beets are a cooler crop, and it's only 65 days to maturity. So I know that I want to get these beets started pretty soon now, just like some of my cool flowers, because it's basically like a cool veggie. So you want to start lettuce and spinach and things like that, you need to go ahead and start those, because those would be your cool vegetables. Now there's another category that I kind of want to touch on real briefly, and I don't want to totally confuse you, but that would be those that can winter over, and they are hardy usually in like a zone 4 or like a zone 5. So I know, because I'm in a zone 6B, I can start those seeds to where I can plant them 6 to 8 weeks before my first frost date. So that means I would want to start them like sometime in August, because I'm going to want to plant them out usually the 1st of September. So that would be things like your yarrow, things like your annual rudbeckia. I sow feverfew. I have that wintered over. And of course I direct sow things like larkspur and bachelor's button and bupleurum, things like that I direct sow. But I'm talking mainly about how to know what to sow when, and when to start it indoors. So all of those cool flowers that I have overwintered in my garden that I started midsummer, or late summer, I started in August. I planted them out around the 1st of September. They're little tiny seedlings out there, and they have survived snow and ice and freezing temperatures and things like that. And as soon as the nights start getting a little bit more warmer, they're going to start really putting on a lot of growth. So that's another category of a cool flower that you can grow. If you want to just kind of dip your toes in the water, then you can stick with the cool flowers that we talked about in the beginning, like the straw flowers and the statice. But if you want to grow some of the things that I have overwintered in my garden, like feverfew and sweet William and yarrow and those things like that, you can start those seeds in the winter and grow them on and then plant them out. They just won't be maybe as vigorous of plants as they are, because they are really having this super strong root system, because they're having to fight the elements and they're having to survive through the elements. That kind of makes them more of a robust plant. You get taller stems and things like that when you do the fall sowing. I also get some of my seeds from Johnny's Seeds, and they do have great information on the back of their seed packet. They have a little bit more information on the back of their seed packet than the Gardener's Workshop does, as far as what temperature to germinate your seeds. That's very helpful. And sometimes the Gardener's Workshop will have that, but the back of Johnny's seed packets is very full of information as well. So to try to wrap this long video up, the things we need to know: what is my growing zone? When is my last frost date? When is my first frost date? And what does the back of this seed packet say? If a seed packet does not have this kind of good information on it, or if I cannot find this kind of good information, and as a matter of fact, even if you don't buy from Johnny's Seeds, you can go on their website and you can get this information if you have a seed that doesn't have any information that you're wanting to grow. But I pretty much like to stick with the seed packets that I know have this kind of information, because I pretty much live by this information, and I like that especially the Gardener's Workshop is kind of simple and straightforward. I am still learning and still just learning new and how to do things better. I don't think we ever get it all figured out. Whew. Take a breath. Oh, wow. I don't know if anybody's going to stick with me this long into this video, but I guess if you're wanting to learn, you have stuck it out, so I appreciate that. And until next time, friends, happy gardening, happy seed starting. Bye-bye.